Thank you. So what I work for CDP, which is also an NGO and works with investors and companies as well as cities trying to drive economies towards a more sustainable path. CDP India along with CDP Germany were the only two organizations out of India. There was only NGO that was named in India's INDC, and our office in Germany made it to the German NDC. So there is acknowledgement of our work in that regard. And there is, I would just like to sort of get into what is it, taking on from Diane's list on where there could be potential possibilities for collaboration and so on. There is tremendous scope. As I mentioned that we have an office in Germany. We actually have two offices. One is in Germany, in Europe, and the other is actually a small island that's trying to break away from Europe at the moment. That's our headquarters there. So, there is a lot of scope in that. And we feel that CDP collects data from companies, and that we have the largest repository of self-reported climate change data by corporates across the globe. We're happy to share that, and our endeavor is to build a platform to provide solutions to companies that to address climate change issues. For instance, we have a program called Action Exchange. So if companies are responding on the same platform, Mahindra is responding in India and BMW is responding in Germany. If they want to benchmark and compare each other, we can do that. And if their suppliers need to do certain actions to come up to speed, we can provide information what the best in class and what those companies are doing across the globe. For instance, if an aluminium company is looking for solutions in India, we can tell them what the best aluminium companies across the globe are doing in terms of addressing emission, going for emission reductions. Those could be primarily through energy efficiency or renewable measures. So we can provide that first step of data, which can put the companies on the path, and then we can also match them, and that's again a technology cooperation with specific firms if required. This is a rather successful program that we have. The other important point that I wanted to stress was you mentioned also a joint project like a preparation facility for climate finance. Next month, we are having a visit from a German investor that controls 300 billion euros in investments, and they want to come and invest in Indian companies, and they're looking for clean Indian companies as well as ones that have potential for making clean investments in those companies. So we're facilitating that in that manner. So what is it that these companies are doing? We can rate and rank them and work with those. And right now, as one of the partners here is the Covenant of Mayors. There's another meeting going on. CDP is part of a platform where we also get data from cities. Last year, we had data from 533 cities. This year, we have, our reports will come out in October. 6,000 companies and nearly 600 cities have provided CDP data on a structured questionnaire, which then can be compared and best practice can be shared and worked on those. So if, for instance, in smart cities, Indian cities would like to take certain actions for low carbon development, for transport planning, we can perhaps tell them examples from what Copenhagen is doing, or from what, for instance, Jakarta is doing in terms of prevention of flooding into the cities, which can be beneficial to Mumbai and so on. So those kind of joint examples can be shared. You also mentioned decarbonization of industry. This is one of our specialities, and we work on that. And we have two projects in that regard. I mentioned about the investor, well, 2 or 3 projects in that regard. I mentioned the investor visits and so on. There's also, for cities, we also have a program called Matchmaker, wherein these 600 cities that have responded, last year 533, of those, what we found was from their data reporting, they have reported over 100 projects that they would like to do, and we are matching those with potential investors who have expressed interest in that regard. So we are basically playing like a wedding or a dating app for cities as well as investors. This is what they're invested in. This is what they're interested in. So we take those projects and we put it to the investors, bring them together and see where they can work with. That's one. The other is, of course, I mentioned about the investor visit, and the Matchmaker project. And finally, the most exciting part that, in fact, today, our German team put this together, and it's won an innovation climate finance tool competition right today. It's called Climetrics, which is a not-for-profit, public and transparent way that we have come up with, along with South Pole, to measure the performance of mutual funds on climate change. So each of those mutual funds in Europe are being rated on their climate change performance. This covers nearly transparency for a 3 trillion fund market in Europe. And so we're rating these funds on how they're impacting on climate change and so on, and we can provide that information and work on those. So with that, I'll just end by saying that besides these, we've developed a whole host of programs for companies to take climate action. These could be, there's one program called Science-Based Targets. We're encouraging companies to take an internal carbon price, which would help them prepare for the upcoming carbon markets and so on. And another aspirational program where, for instance, we're asking companies to commit to 100% renewable target. So this then generates demand, which helps India ratchet up its renewable energy targets. I'd be happy to discuss these more. Thank you very much.